Well, as Telangana goes to polls next year, BJP is already sounding the poll bugle in the state. We're getting you these live pictures of the National Executive Meeting. JP Nadda, the President of the Bharatiya Janata Party, on the screens right now with the Prime Minister on the right. Remember, the Prime Minister has arrived in Telangana a few moments ago to attend the National Executive Meeting of the Bharatiya Janata Party. The Prime Minister there sounding the poll bugle. And the BJP says the countdown of the downfall of the TRS has begun. BJP leaders from state, central ministries and also members of the National Executive have, in fact, are now planning to tour the assembly segments of the state. This is something that has been made public by the party already. The Prime Minister is going to, in fact, inaugurate the National Executive Meeting. There will be political resolutions as well, as what we know. The General Secretaries of the party are meeting the National President to discuss the agenda of the two-day meet of the BJP in the state. This is the much talked about National Executive Meeting in Hyderabad, but the Prime Minister has already arrived. We're getting you these pictures, in fact, from the National Executive Meeting of the BJP inaugurated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Interesting developments at a time when the Prime Minister is in Hyderabad. We have the TRS Chief and the Chief Minister taking a dig at the BJP, taking a dig at the Prime Minister and also welcoming the opposition's Prime Ministerial candidate Yashwant Sinha. KCR has said all talk no work. Just ahead of the Prime Minister's visit to the state, there are two massive shows of strength in Hyderabad, the capital of Telangana, with the BJP holding its two-day National Executive Meeting. The pictures of the same on your screen right now. And we have the Telangana Rashtra Samiti meeting, which has been organized to rally support for Yashwant Sinha, the opposition's candidate for the presidential elections. In fact, when the Prime Minister arrived in Telangana, he was welcomed by the Governor, Tamilisai Soundarajan of Telangana, the Governor of Telangana, and not the Chief Minister, as is the norm usually. The Chief Minister, of course, in a separate show of strength, is batting for Yashwant Sinha, also urging parliamentarians to support him in the presidential elections, as the BJP is sounding the poll bugle in the state of Telangana. Pictures of the executive meeting on your screen right now. The Prime Minister, in fact, at the National Executive Meeting, the two-day National Executive of the meeting, where the BJP is going to strategize on what to do next as far as the elections to the state of Telangana is concerned, due next year. There is, in fact, a separate show of strength by the Telangana Rashtra Samiti, which has organized a rally in support of Yashwant Sinha, the opposition's candidate for the presidential elections in the state. Rahul Srivastava is getting us more details on that story. On one hand, Rahul, we have the BJP holding its mega National Executive Meeting, where they're going to be strategizing on what to do next as far as the battle for Telangana is concerned. On the other hand, the optics of KCR welcoming Yashwant Sinha to the state, even as they show their support to the opposition's presidential candidate.
Sneha, it's a very interesting pitched political battle one is witnessing. And in terms of sheer optics, if you realize, the BJP is not a huge player in Telangana. It is the Congress which has definitely more seats as far as the assembly is concerned. And the Congress has been an older player. But the BJP is creating a huge splash in Telangana. It has brought its national executive here. Just 3 days ago, the BJP sent out 119 leaders to 119 constituencies to get feedback for this national executive. The Prime Minister is going to address a rally. There is going to be a political and an economic resolution. This is basically to show that after Maharashtra, Telangana is the next battleground that the BJP has identified. The BJP realizes that in few pockets of the state, polarization does work, but not across the state. It realizes that 56% OBCs in the state will be difficult battle to mount. But what the BJP is doing by creating this big splash, threatening Mr. KCR, what it has done is eventually that Mr. KCR, the TRS, has started recognizing the BJP as the biggest challenge in the state. And that is why, as a counter to the BJP's national executive, you have the TRS bringing Mr. Yashwant Sinha, the presidential candidate, here. So one can say definitely that the BJP, in terms of the optics of the public, and optics as far as the TRS is concerned, there is definitely a contest on. And that's what exactly the BJP wants, that at least in the public mind space, the BJP should start getting identified as a challenger to the TRS. Remember, it is the TRS which fought for the Telangana state and got a lot of benefits for that. And that is where the Congress got decimated eventually. And the BJP wants to fill up that space, and that is why this national executive is very important. The BJP is likely to identify politically as dynastic rule as one of the key messages as far as this meet is concerned, to target the TRS and its ruling dispensation, Mr. KCR, his son, who is a minister, and his daughter, who are called the virtual power gateways in the state. The BJP is identifying that. BJP is identifying some sections of the society which are not still untapped by various political groups here. And then always, as always, there is going to be the strong wave of polarization as far as Telangana is concerned.
You know, Rahul, what I also want to ask you is that whether there is going to be a resolution in connection to what has happened in the country, two developments vis-a-vis the murders, one in Udaipur, the second one in Amravati in Maharashtra. Is the BJP going to touch upon that as well, given that you mentioned polarization?
Yes, certainly. See, remember one thing, that what has transpired in these places that you are mentioning, Udaipur and others, is definitely part of the strong BJP narrative in Rajasthan, for example, what happened in Udaipur. And that is why it is no coincidence that right after the meeting of the office bearers, which is kind of a curtain raiser meeting deciding the agenda, time and scheduling for the national executive, the press conference, the first one, was held by Vasundhara Raje Scindia. Now, she is the ex-Chief Minister of Rajasthan and one of the most prominent faces in Rajasthan. And though she didn't field questions and though she refused to get drawn into some direct confirmation, but she did say that whatever are the strong prevailing realities, political realities in the country, those are going to get incorporated into the political resolution and are going to be discussed. So it is absolutely impossible that the BJP will not take them up, because I think the BJP is not just making it a political issue. I think in the run-up to the Rajasthan elections in 2023, this incident that has happened in terms of the incident that has happened in Rajasthan, in Udaipur, and the response of the Congress party, the BJP is actually going to make a big feast out of that issue. And if there is an attempt to claim that the secular politics, the so-called secular politics of the Congress has been detrimental to the interests of the majority, that is going to be one of the driving planks for the BJP.